now to discussing the immediate crisis response. And I wonder now, as we turn to our panelist, we'll operate in terms of how the panelists appear on the screen. Kevin, I wonder if you could give your perspective on how Dell Technologies responded when the crisis surfaced, and how you were able to scramble to maintain business operations and continuity.
Sure. So at Dell, we have a fairly robust crisis management team structure that gets called across the organization. And so that was called up, and we started working on what are we going to do about this problem early on when it was really impacting China more than anywhere else. We, of course, do have business interests there and a lot of employees there. So we were very focused on China and how to deal with China from a technology perspective. I own the infrastructure at Dell, so we were very focused on our networks there, our VPNs there, so people could go to work at home. We were scrambling to deal with how do we, if we run out of capacity in China, because we didn't design our networks for everyone to work from home at the same time. How do we get those users connected to nearby VPN capabilities in Asia to keep our business operations moving forward?
Excellent. Did you leverage any? Were you looking more at VPN connections to VPN concentrators? Were SD-WAN overlays part of that, or?
They were. A lot of what really helped us here was a big investment we've been making in SD-WAN across the world, and we had been replacing a lot of MPLS with internet, and so when we do that, we were able to get, in a lot of cases, almost 10x the bandwidth for that we had before, for even better cost. So the SD-WAN thing was a play to use our own technology. It was one of our, obviously, I'm sure there's other folks who would say the same thing about their technologies and their companies, but we're big believers in using our own technologies and proving the point, and we got out on the edge and started doing it, and it's been a great project. Helped us be well positioned to take almost 100% of our employees to work from home very quickly once this thing started breaking out of China.
Thanks very much, Kevin. And eating your own dog food is always great in terms of giving
Drinking
customers confidence.
We like to say sometimes.
Yes, yeah, it's a little more attractive. Varesh, I wonder if you could give a perspective from F5 in terms of what you saw and how you responded.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, right out of the gates, our thinking was to be quick, to be decisive, and to be transparent. I remember very early days. I was driving back home from a ski resort with the family on a Sunday evening, and I had to actually pull up into a supermarket parking lot to take a call with my leadership team, where we actually invoked our crisis management and business continuity plan. And I remember opening the call by saying, I hope this call turns out to be much ado about nothing, but I'd rather be abundantly cautious than not. And it turns out that we did that fairly early on, and one of the best decisions we could have made. The first thing that we did was establish a guiding principle that our entire response plan was going to be governed by. We're a global company, and to roll out procedures, policies on global scale immediately is going to be tough. So we really came up with a guideline and an operating philosophy that we called our human first approach, and that every decision that we were going to make going forward was going to be based on a human first approach. And so that gave license to, for example, our frontline salespeople that were trying to make a month or make a quarter, that they had the license to take a human first approach in terms of their personal health, their personal safety, and also doing the right thing by our customers. And so if it meant we missed a month from a financial perspective or missed a quarter from a financial perspective, we were going to be okay with that from a company perspective, as long as we took a human first approach. We moved quickly to implementing office by office guidelines around working from home, etc. Of course, working with local authorities, local governments, local leaders, and peer level companies within the different geographies to implement work from home practices. We had to scramble pretty quickly to enable the, effectively 100% work from home for our entire organization, making sure that we were provisioning the appropriate tools, technologies, and equipment for people to do that. And as soon as we were able to establish that our entire global workforce was safe, was well, and was able to continue to work from home, we made sure we extended the human force approach to our customers, and recognizing the technology that we provide as F5, as a leader in the networking space and security space, our ability to enable companies who were dealing with trying to enable large volumes of people to work from home was high. So we immediately focused on that and removed every type of roadblock that we could in terms of enabling customers to be able to support them to help their workforce to work from home. So our entire initial response was based on enabling our business continuity plans pretty quickly, but really putting a overarching lens of human first in every decision that we made.
That's very important. The human first precept is a recognition that the crisis was disruptive to every aspect of life, right? Not just the work life, but personal life as well. So it's a good insight. Dan, I wonder if you could provide your perspective from what you saw at Keysight.
Yeah, so for Keysight, this was kind of a deja vu moment for us, not with the pandemic sense, but in late 2017, our headquarters are in Santa Rosa, California, and there was a wildfire, the Tubbs wildfire, that came racing down the hills and really took out our corporate headquarters. Significant fire damage. This is where not only our headquarters, but our fab and our tech center, hub of global operations, and we had to exercise crisis management back then, and did a pretty significant retrospective on what would happen at scale globally with our multinational company if this occurs anywhere else. Not knowing that a pandemic was soon going to be what we're faced with. But the good news is we had really dusted off our crisis response, again, about how to be employee first, put employee health and safety #1 priority, and reimagining what would we need to do at every location around the world with that as our #1 priority for whatever crisis may hit, be it China or Europe or other parts of Asia. So as this unfolded in January, we just put that into motion, sent everybody to work from home, probably before the local authorities required it. We had already re-engineered our entire global network to be SD-WAN. We'd rethought our whole VPN architecture, just in case something like this were to happen. But we couldn't kind of imagine in January that this was actually happening. So we kind of assumed this is a one-off. This is a China-only thing. Good thing this isn't global yet. And then South Korea started to hit just a few weeks later. And then that's when we really kicked into high gear to say, this is going to spread. This is indeed going to be global. This is not one facility of ours. This very well could be every facility on the planet that is going to need to work from home. And we had to go into hyperdrive to really make sure we put all of the actions into motion to help everyone basically connect and just work remotely.
Absolutely. No, and you're absolutely, this is such a connected world today, not just in terms of technologies that we're talking about, but obviously transport too. And these viruses certainly got around this virus certainly got around the world in incredible time, right? It just spread at such a rate. It was hard for all of us to keep up, I think. Bell, from the Netapp perspective, I wonder if you could provide some insights into whether your experience was similar to the ones we've already heard about, or whether you had something that was particular to your organization and requirements.
Yeah, thanks, Brad. Yeah, Netapp is, a large technology company. We span cloud utilities and on-prem resources, data centers around data management, data storage. So we're kind of a tech company, a pure tech company that really builds and sells software. So let me tell you a couple stories about this that I think are really interesting. The first one is it all starts and ends with the customer, right? I think most of us share that view. It's our raison d'etre, is that we provide value to the customer. So we have a pretty significant call center and customer support center, interestingly enough, in North Carolina, in the center of North Carolina. So we had been prepared due to previous hurricane evacuations due to coastal hurricanes in the Atlantic season, where we basically had to lift and move our North American customer service operations to be able to allow these agents to work from home, work from the road, wherever they were during these evacuations due to hurricanes. So actually, the shift due to the pandemic to take the diaspora of those service resources and continue to function was a natural outgrowth of some of the things we'd done before. So, it's a case of not all crises are the same, but they provide you with that muscle memory to deal with that crisis and figure out how you're going to deal with the next crisis. So that was really helpful to us so as not to impact our customers. And of course, a lot of customers were going through their own throes and challenges and needed that reassurance and that close contact with their support partners during this period of time. So that's a really great example. I'm going to give you another one that never occurred to any of us and occurred during this pandemic. India was hit particularly hard in their lockdowns in their cities. And most of you who are familiar with Indian operations know that several of the cities literally locked down street traffic. We have a major presence in our Bangalore, India office, and people could not get the permits to go out on the streets to go to the office for any circumstances at all for several weeks due to the authorities not wanting the spread of the pandemic. We continued to hire and onboard employees in India during this crisis. And we actually went through about a 3-week period where we were hiring some experienced personnel as well as some new college grads. We could literally not get them a personal computer during that period of time. But yet we wanted them to onboard. We wanted to keep up the momentum of the hire in the onboarding process. We have what we call a Netapp virtual desktop, which is really a cloud-based utility for a virtualized, secure, enclosed desktop that protects our IP. And we were able to use that cloud utility to drop that image remotely on laptops that these Indian employees had. In a couple of cases, these were laptops that came with new college grads that they had used in college productively. We were able to drop that image on those machines and get those people working with our software tools during the early stages of this pandemic. And to be able to do that in the outskirts of a city like Bangalore during this crisis really talks about the new world order in how we're operating today. So some fascinating lessons learned there. And then the third thing I share, and I'm probably not alone in this and love to hear what the other panelists think. We're largely a software development company, even though we deal with data center. 95% of our asset value and IP is in the software that goes into operating systems and utilities. We actually looked statistically at a lot of our engineering tools and platforms. We looked at code check-in, we looked at code checkout, we looked at code progression, we looked at lines of code produced. And we did this for the first couple of months of the pandemic, and we actually saw a material statistical improvement in productivity of our engineering teams during this period of time. Unbelievable and undeniable. And I think part of it is, everybody proving to themselves that, look, I'm going to be productive in this environment. I can be as productive, if not more productive in this environment. I'm going to prove it to myself. But I think there was more to it than that. I think there's a compression in time that goes with not walking building to building, conference room to conference room, going to the coffee klatch and having a discussion, and people moderating and managing their time over more than that 8-hour in the workplace day, working it across the day that makes sense to them, maybe 12, 15 hours when they're at home, and to be able to modulate that effectively. And so we actually have seen engineering productivity increases, and that will not be lost on the management team as we look at future posturing. So just some real interesting stories there, Brad, I wanted to share with the community.
Yeah, great perspectives, Bill. And certainly the commutes are much shorter too, right there. Walking through the house.
Hey, Brad, some of us had trouble making it from the, from the kitchen to our home office in time to get that first meeting, getting a little lax there.
Absolutely. Thanks very much. Russ, similar perspective from NetScout, anything that was a variation on the themes we've heard about now, or did you see some common challenges?
No, pretty similar actually, and a lot of what Bill said rings home to the longer days and the way that people are adjusting to the environment. And it really is, you get done what you need to get done when you need to get it done, right? So you kind of take that approach. We were lucky at NetScout. We had just finished a major redesign of our network, going to an SD-WAN implementation and an implementation into a colo. So we kind of got in front of the curve. We were very fortunate. We did that all in 19. So we were pretty robust in terms of our compute and networking capabilities. But in my role at NetScout, I also get to work very closely with our customers and get some of the insights that they see. And it was very interesting. Right after the crisis really happened and everybody went into lockdown, it created a great challenge for folks to get remote access turned up and make sure that they had the capacity and the capability to handle this new remote workforce. And an awful lot of our customers are financials, and you tend to have a limited amount of remote workforce in those environments. You know, we have one of our customers that basically provisioned VDI access to 1,100 users over the course of a day. Well, in one day's time, they had to move to an 11,000 user VDI environment. So, you know, this is just, it's stunning. You know, all of a sudden you have 217,000 users coming in remotely. Some of the big organizations that are out there. So just the stunning amount of activity that went along with this was very hard for people to address, but they did. And I think that the interesting thing that came back is most of them said, we're running hot, but we're stable. And that was kind of the best that anybody could hope for. And then over time, what we started to see too is there's a change also in the security angle. We're starting to see a little bit more targeted DDoS attacks towards the VPN resources and the like. They tend to be smaller in scale, but very, very focused. So these are real challenges for folks to ensure that they're able to protect themselves in those environments, and for that kind of more targeted attack where they were pretty well protected on the e-business side because you kind of got that from your content delivery networks or whomever. But now it's really, as we take a look at the private IP space and how do I protect that? That's a challenge as well.
Yeah. So even the cyber attackers have adapted to the
Absolutely.
to the new reality. Absolutely.
You know, and it gives the gamer kids a new target.
Yeah. Yeah, that's probably not good, but
right, exactly.
Yeah. Christina, I wonder from your perspective as global business strategy and analytics at Oracle, do you have a different take on what happened and how Oracle responded to it?
Well, I echo a lot of what my colleagues have already mentioned. Maybe a couple of things that I'll add from more of a business angle or view. Oftentimes when a crisis hits, no one will fault you for your response as long as you have a plan. And in this case, I think we had multiple plans. If we really step back, even though this is a pandemic and has always been identified by our insurers, for those that do really follow their insurers' risk maps, a pandemic was always something that was at the far right, low frequency, high severity. But it's been on all the risk maps, Zurich, AIG, for at least 2 decades. So we've always known we've lived with this risk. But what we may not have known until we absolutely had to execute some of our plans was how much interdependency there is within and among this particular risk. So for example, we looked at number 1, employees first, customers, and its suppliers. So that triage absolutely was true. However, when we look at a pandemic, your continuity plan for succession planning becomes very important because we really didn't know, based upon this pandemic, would we actually have a loss of life to some of our employees, and how would we leverage our succession plans? Number 2, if you look at things like people working from home, workers' compensation, how do you make sure your employees are not only productive, but they're safe? So you have to consider those risks. Third, someone mentioned, I think it was Russ, security. How do you look at breaches, security breaches, and what is your response to a security breach? These are things that are often true. Bioterrorism, at one point, how could you also look at your continuity plans and how you would address bioterrorism? there are aspects of this particular risk that are multi-threaded. And I think that's something that I'm really proud of Oracle and the way we looked at it very critically, very systemically. Some of the things that I saw us do that maybe we didn't mention is number one, communication. How does the organization communicate, and how do we leverage everything from video to town halls to Ask Me Anything forums, so our employees have a voice and can literally be heard, and we can absolutely talk to them. Second, our HR organization not only leveraged our human capital management software to actually weather through this, and we still are, but they also really were very proactive at having different forums, different webcasts on working from home, looking at dealing with or balancing work-life, having specific medical advisors coming in. And I really appreciated that focus on our people, because if you take care of your people, they'll take care of your customers. And we're all here using Zoom, and Zoom is one of our customers. So very, very important, Oracle's responsibility that some of our customers are the front line. And we have to make sure we're there for our customers. And that first and foremost means we have to take care of our employees so they can take care of the customer, as well as how do we make sure that we build customer and employee loyalty throughout this period. I think the last risk that we didn't mention is creditor risk. How can we also look at that last risk? There are going to be some organizations that literally aren't going to be able to pay their bills. How do you look at credit risk, and how do you manage all of these different risks from a systemic perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a great observation regarding the organizations that have really suffered a lot of hardship during this period, right? And we've done surveys where you can see certain vertical markets, and obviously those that depend more on human interaction and human exchange. You think about transportation, you think about hospitality and so forth. A lot of those sectors have been hit particularly hard during this crisis. So it's a great observation. Pathmal, I know Tata, obviously a worldwide company. You're head of Americas, but you belong to a company that operates worldwide. What did you see when this crisis hit, and how did Tata respond to it?
Yeah, so it's very interesting, Brad, listening to the esteemed colleagues on this panel. Very similar experience. So when this hit, we had two parallel tracks. One is our employees, their safety and health, and our customers, equally important, right? And as a digital ecosystem enabler, a lot of our customers, actually all of the companies that are represented on this panel, we one way, shape, or form do business with you in every part of the world. And how do we serve our customers, especially for their requirements? And then with our employees, how do we make sure that business continuity happens? As Varish talked about, the empowerment went down, all the way down in the organization to the account manager level to make sure, let's do what's right for the customer, right? Dan talked about the fire in Santa Rosa, Bill talked about the hurricanes, Kevin talked about the China. Look, I don't think there's any statistical models that define the situation we are at, because this is truly a global pandemic, right? All the other events, we were prepared in isolation. Okay, if a hurricane hits, it's in one country. Doesn't hit the entire world at the same time. This came as a domino effect, right? It starts with China, going to South Korea, India, US, etc. And so as a global provider, presence in 160 countries in the world, and when the customers are calling us up and saying, I need bandwidth here, I need to increase my IP ports over there, and with our center of gravity from operational perspective centered in our headquarter location in India, and Bill talked a little bit about how the India situation evolved, managing through that and the regulatory and the government restrictions, the constraints. It was truly an experience that I don't think we ever could have defined before this happened. And And so I was very pleased with how the interdependencies between our partners worked out. I think the entire industry came together with the two parallel track, the customer first and employee first. So I think that open-mindedness where we put behind all the financial and all that stuff, which stood up for the moment, was truly exemplary. And it's a big lessons learned for all of us, in my point of view, and how we collectively manage through within the ecosystem to help each other out.
That's a good point, given where Tad is in the industry. As you said, you work with many, if not all, of the other organizations represented here in terms of providing solutions for your customers and theirs. And it's an interesting perspective. Thank you for that.